Some crimes are so disturbing that even judges struggle to believe the person responsible is still a child. These are cases where kids committed acts so extreme that entire courtrooms fell silent as their sentences were read. From emotionless stares to chilling smiles, these young offenders showed reactions that shocked the world. Here are evil kids whose courtroom moments were just as unsettling as their crimes. Number 12. Alyssa Bustamante. 15-year-old Alyssa lured 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton into the woods near their homes in St. Martins, Missouri. Alyssa was a troubled teen who had been living with her grandparents along with her 3 siblings after both her parents were unable to care for them. Friends and family had complained about Alyssa's behavior, claiming she showed disturbing tendencies. Alyssa convinced her younger sister to bring Elizabeth out to play. She then took both girls to the woods, where she made her sister wait further away. Alyssa then reportedly strangled Elizabeth before stabbing her 8 times in the chest. Once she was done, she dumped the 9-year-old's body in a shallow grave she had dug just a week prior. Investigators retrieved her journal, where she had described the event, claiming that it felt amazing and indicating that she would have done it again. However, just 2 days after the unaliving, Alyssa was arrested. In court, the defense argued that Alyssa was a troubled kid and even had experts come in to diagnose her with major depressive disorder and borderline personality disorder. The defense painted Alyssa as a misunderstood teen who was just a victim like any other kid. The prosecution, however, claimed that this was not the case. They pointed out how Alyssa had plotted the unaliving for weeks, and even after she had committed the crime, she showed no remorse. They argued that she wanted to unalive more kids, and had she not been caught, who knows who would have been next. It was now all up to the judge, who sided with the prosecution, but accepted Alyssa's plea of second-degree unaliving. Her first parole hearing was in 2024, where she was denied an early release. Even if her life sentence for Elizabeth's unaliving is overturned, Alyssa would still have to serve out a concurrent 30-year sentence for possession of a dangerous weapon. In any case, the earliest she might ever be released would be when she is 65. Number 11. Morgan Geyser. Morgan Geyser had been best friends with Peyton Isabella since childhood, and together they befriended Anissa Weier. All 3 girls were 12 years old at the time of the crime in 2014, which makes the incident even more chilling. Morgan and Anissa bonded over their shared belief in the Slender Man, an internet legend originating from the site Creepypasta. They believed that the Slender Man was real and that he would come and attack them if they did not offer him a sacrifice. The 2 girls then hatched a plan to sacrifice their friend, Peyton. They lured her into the woods close to their homes in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where they convinced Peyton they just wanted to play hide and seek. However, they tackled Peyton to the ground, stabbed her 19 times, and then left her there. Peyton, miraculously, survived and managed to drag herself to the road where a cyclist called emergency services. According to the operating surgeon, if the blade had moved even an inch elsewhere, Peyton would not have made it. 5 hours after the attack, police apprehended Morgan and Anissa while they were on their way to a national forest where they claimed Slender Man lived. Both girls were tried as adults. Anissa's defense team argued that she was acting on whatever Morgan told her to do. Morgan's defense team argued that she had earlier been misdiagnosed and was actually suffering from childhood-onset schizophrenia. While the court agreed with both defenses, it did not undermine the severity of their crimes. Anissa served time and was eventually released into her father's custody. She will be under state supervision until she is 37. Meanwhile, Morgan's sentence was longer, and she repeatedly got into trouble with the law and her caseworkers for her behavior, including an escape in 2020, which made things worse for her. Peyton stated that while she has trauma from the event, she is slowly trying to move past it. Number 10. Jamarian Lawhorn. In 2014, at just 12 years old, Jamarian Lawhorn became the youngest convict in Kent County's history. Jamarian came from an abusive household where his mother was neglectful, and his stepfather would beat and berate the kids over minor offenses. Psychiatrists later claimed that because of trouble at home, Jamarian had been suffering from an undiagnosed depressive disorder. Still, the prosecution argued that it was no excuse for what he did. In 2014, Jamarian took a kitchen knife, went up to 9-year-old Connor Verkirk, and stabbed him multiple times. Connor's brother ran home to inform their mother, while Jamarian calmly went inside a neighbor's home. There, he told the neighbor that he had just committed a crime and asked for 911 to be called. According to the neighbor, Jamarian sat there quietly, waiting for the police, and only spoke when he saw police approaching the wrong house. "I'm here." Jamarion's trial was short. The defense did not have a strong case, but they argued for leniency given Jamarion's childhood circumstances. The judge and prosecution, and even Connor's family, agreed that he was a misunderstood child who deserved a second chance. Reportedly, Connor's grandmother tried her best to visit Jamarion while he was incarcerated. Because of his behavior while locked up, Jamarion was granted an early release in 2021. Number 9. Cindy Collier and Shirley Wolfe. In June 1983, just 8 hours after they had first met each other, Cindy and Shirley decided they were going to unalive someone. The two troubled teens had met at a juvenile facility and had met at a group home earlier that day. They later called one another kindred spirits and wanted to start a life together. They decided to steal a car from an elderly woman in Auburn, California, and began knocking on doors. After 2 failed attempts, they reached Anna Brackett's residence. The woman let them in, chatted with them for an hour, and was then ambushed by the girls, who began strangling and stabbing the 85-year-old. At the time of the unaliving, Cindy was 15 and Shirley was 14. The girls could not find the keys to Anna's car, so the unaliving was essentially for nothing. Later that day, when they were arrested, they confessed to the crime, calling it lots of fun. Shirley confessed first, and Cindy admitted during interrogation that they did it without any remorse. The defense pointed out how both girls came from horribly abusive backgrounds and that they were suffering from past trauma and mental health issues. The judge took the defense's pleas into consideration, but the prosecution argued that it should not undermine the severity of the crimes they had committed, especially considering the fact that they had just unalived a random old woman on nothing more than an impulse. The girls were sentenced to a juvenile facility and ultimately paroled within the next decade. Both girls have since expressed remorse for their actions, even though they were anything but sorry at the time of the unaliving. Shirley even wrote on Anna's online obituary in 2014, "I am truly sorry. I am 45 now, and I wish I could turn back time. No words can undo my damage. You were a kind and sweet lady. Should have been me, not you." Number 8. Daniel Marsh. In 2013, after years of homicidal tendencies, Daniel Marsh claimed he had enough. The 15-year-old left his mother's residence in Davis, California, and began searching for open doors and windows in the neighborhood. He eventually reached the home of Claudia Maupin and Oliver Northup, an elderly couple. Daniel made his way into the home through a screen door, waited for a while in the living room, before he heard snoring noises coming from upstairs. He then went up to the couple's bedroom, where he reportedly watched them sleep for a couple of minutes. That was when Daniel claimed Claudia woke up, saw him, and started screaming. He began stabbing her and Oliver several times. According to the coroner's report, the couple had each been stabbed over 60 times, their bodies later mutilated. The case made headlines because of its severity and randomness. Nothing was stolen from the home. It was not until several months later that Daniel was arrested after he had bragged about the crime to a friend, who then went on and reported it. Daniel was arrested that very same day, and he confessed almost immediately. He claimed that he was driven by the voices he had been hearing in his head since he was 10 years old. The defense team pointed out that Daniel had been suffering from several mental health disorders and was on heavy medication at the time of the unaliving. The prosecution argued that he showed a chilling level of depravity when committing the crimes. Not only had he targeted the home at random, but he also stood over the couple for several minutes before committing overkill. To make it worse, he even dismembered their bodies before fleeing the scene. The prosecution also pointed out that Daniel was unapologetic and did not come forward with the crime himself. He even told investigators that he felt a dopamine rush from committing the unaliving. The judge noted the depravity and also Daniel's lack of remorse, sentencing him to a life behind bars. Number 7. Jordan Brown. In 2009, Jordan Brown was arrested for the suspected unaliving of his father's pregnant fiancée, Kenzie Hoke. The police were alerted to a possible crime at the New Beaver, Pennsylvania, residence by Kenzie's 7-year-old daughter. They soon started interrogating Jordan, who was 11 years old at the time, and determined that he had unalived Kenzie with his hunting shotgun. Jordan claimed he was innocent, but there was enough evidence to suggest that he had been the culprit. The defense tried to argue that it was likely Kenzie's ex-boyfriend who had earlier made threats against her and her new family, but the prosecution was fixated on Jordan. His friends and family cried in court, including his father, Chris Brown, who claimed that Jordan was arrested for something he had not done. The case gathered significant controversy. Because of the judge's decision to try the 11-year-old as an adult. He was subsequently sent to a juvenile facility and faced a possibility of a life behind bars with parole after 25 years. However, in 2013, his case was called again after the defense provided new evidence. The time Jordan was released and exonerated, but then, in 2018, a new trial was called. Because of double jeopardy laws, Jordan cannot be tried for the same crime ever again. To this day, there are people out there who believe that he really did shoot Kenzie in the back of her head while she was sleeping, pointing toward the shotgun and the missing shot case. They even assert that the shot case was later found on Jordan's route to school, further proving he was the criminal. However, now 28 years old, Jordan continues to claim his innocence. Whether he did or did not unalive his father's 8-month pregnant fiancée is something we will probably never know. Number 6. Joshua Young, probably one of the most twisted cases you have ever heard of. In 2011, 14-year-old Terry Zwicker was found unalived behind Liberty High School in East Indiana. Terry, an honor roll student, was visiting his mother and stepfather at the time of the unaliving. The couple, Amanda McFarland and Josh Gooker, also lived with Josh's 15-year-old son, Joshua Young. Joshua was initially charged as a suspect in Terry's unaliving. He was arrested and sentenced to a life term. However, in 2013, Josh stepped forward and claimed that he had unalived Terry. He claimed that he was angry with Terry for stealing a lighter and also frustrated with his mother and decided to fatally attack him. He claimed he used a metal pipe, but the weapon was never retrieved. Josh claimed he acted alone, which allowed a new trial for Joshua. This time, Joshua was released. But the case took another turn in 2014, when Josh claimed he had lied to save his son and that he was not actually involved in Terry's unaliving. However, the judge denied his pleas to toss his conviction. Since then, Josh has been begging his son to come forward with the truth. Since his release, Joshua has continued getting into trouble with the law, including several cases of domestic violence, firearm possession, and other offenses. Terry's father, Trey, has always maintained that Joshua was the real culprit and should be in prison. In 2014, they sat face-to-face on the Dr. Phil show, where Joshua maintained his innocence, claiming, "I'm looking into your eyes and telling you, I did not unalive your son." Josh joined the conversation via video conference and again begged his son to tell the truth. Dr. Phil claimed that he could see innocence in Joshua's eyes. But the case took yet another turn in 2019, when Joshua wrote a 4-page letter confessing to the crime. His motive was simply that he did not like his stepbrother. Despite his confession, legal experts claim that it likely will not overturn Josh's conviction, and that, because of double jeopardy laws, Joshua probably will not be tried for Terry's mother, despite Trey's advocacy. This essentially means that an unaliver is free with no consequences whatsoever. Number 5. Michael Hernandez. In 2004, Michael Hernandez lured his supposed best friend, 14-year-old Jaime Goff, to their Southwood Middle School bathroom, where he then stabbed him multiple times, taking his life. Michael was arrested shortly afterward and confessed immediately. He claimed that he was not in control of the situation and something took over him. The defense tried to use this to prove that he was clinically insane at the time of the unalivings, but the prosecution painted a different picture entirely. They showed evidence that suggested Michael was fascinated with the idea of becoming a serial unaliver and was inspired by notorious criminals like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. They also claimed that despite his arrest, Michael would call his father from prison and ask him to put heavy metal music on the receiver for him. Michael was also obsessed with Adolf Hitler and had expressed his interests on becoming notorious before as well. Jamie's parents stood in court, claiming that their son had no idea his best friend would do something so horrible, and argued that Michael was in full control of his actions that day. In 2008, a judge rejected Michael's insanity plea and ordered him to spend the rest of his life in prison. But then, in 2021, reports surfaced that Michael, by then 31 years old, had passed away from an unknown illness while behind bars. Number 4. Christopher Pittman. In 2001, Christopher, who now goes by Kirsten, unalived her grandparents, Joe and Joy Pittman. At just 10 years old, Kristen was sent to live with her paternal grandparents after her mother walked out on the family, and her father claimed that she had become a handful. Kristen had previously run away from home and was later brought back and released into her grandparents' care. Apparently, for the next few years of her life, Kristen saw some form of stability, but that was because she had been receiving medication for her mental health condition. When she was 12 years old, Kristen's medication changed, and that was when things started to turn ugly. Apparently, Kristen was out of control and had to routinely be reprimanded for her actions. On the morning of the unaliving, she had reportedly choked a child on the school bus and been disruptive in church. Angered by her grandparents reprimanding her, Kristen snuck into their room in the middle of the night, unalived them with a shotgun, stole valuables, and ran away in their vehicle. When she was found 2 counties away, she claimed that an intruder had broken into the home, unalived her family, burned the house down, and then kidnapped her. During interrogation, however, she confessed. While her crime was severe enough to guarantee a life behind bars, the defense argued that she was not in the right mental headspace because she had been denied her usual prescription. Her case went through significant controversy. Kristen's life sentence was ultimately revoked for a 20-year prison term, which she completed in 2023 and was released. Number 3. Daniel Petrick. Daniel Petrick was 16 years old when he carried out a shocking attack on his own parents in Ohio in 2006. It all began with a video game. Daniel had become obsessed with playing Halo, but his strict parents did not allow violent games in the house. When they found out he was secretly playing, they took the game away and locked it in a safe with a handgun. Daniel became fixated on getting the game back. One evening, he found the key to the safe and took both the game and the weapon. He walked into the living room where his parents were sitting together and told them to close their eyes because he had a surprise for them. Trusting their son, they did. Moments later, he fired. His mother was unalived, and his father was badly injured but survived. During the trial, prosecutors argued that Daniel planned everything carefully. They said he knew exactly what he was doing when he took the key, opened the safe, and waited for the right moment. The defense told a very different story. They argued that Daniel was deeply addicted to video games and mentally unwell. They claimed he was disconnected from reality and did not fully understand the consequences of his actions. As the judge spoke about the crime and its impact, Daniel sobbed. When the sentence of 23 years to life was announced, he cried uncontrollably, claiming he loved both his parents. His father, also a victim, tried to claim that Daniel was regretful of his actions and should be released. To this day, Daniel remains in custody and will not be eligible for parole until 2023. Number 2. Joseph Hall. In 2011, Joseph lived in California with his parents. His father, Jeff Hall, was known for being involved in extremist groups and often spoke about hateful beliefs at home. Joseph grew up surrounded by this environment. One night, while his father slept on the living room couch, Joseph picked up a revolver from the house. He walked quietly into the room and fired at close range. His father was unalived instantly. Joseph then calmly went back to his bedroom and waited until morning, when his younger sister discovered what had happened. The case quickly drew national attention because of Joseph's age. During the trial, prosecutors argued that Joseph knew exactly what he was doing. They said he had practiced with weapons before and had talked about unaliving his father. To them, this was a planned act, not a childish mistake. The defense argued something very different. They said Joseph was a deeply troubled child who had grown up in a toxic and extremist home. According to them, he had been exposed to violence and hateful ideas from a very early age. They claimed he did not fully understand the weight of his actions and needed psychological help rather than severe punishment. He was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to 40 years to life in prison, meaning he would spend most of his life behind bars for something he did before even reaching his teenage years. Number 1. Eric Smith. Eric Smith was just 13 years old when he committed a crime that shocked his small town and the entire country. In 1993, Eric lived in a quiet area of New York. He was known as a troubled kid who had been bullied at school for years. One summer day, 4-year-old Derek Roby wandered away from a nearby park. Eric saw the younger boy alone and led him into a wooded area. There, he attacked him in a brutal way that horrified investigators and the local community. When the case went to trial, prosecutors argued that Eric knew exactly what he was doing. They said he carefully led the child away from the public and then tried to hide what he had done. The defense focused on Eric's troubled childhood. They said he had been severely bullied, struggled socially, and showed signs of serious mental and emotional problems. His lawyers argued that he was a deeply disturbed teenager who needed long-term treatment, not just punishment. Eric's reaction in court became one of the most talked about parts of the case. He often sat with an unusual expression on his face, sometimes smirking or staring blankly as graphic details were described. People in the courtroom were unsettled by how calm he appeared. It was difficult for many to understand how someone so young could show so little visible emotion. He was eventually sentenced to 9 years to life in prison. Eric spent decades behind bars before finally being granted parole as an adult, after serving more than 25 years for the crime.